الحمد لله وكفى والله سكنا وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خيركم لأهله وأنا خيركم لأهله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. So alhamdulillah, today is episode 8 of our smart home series. And I apologize I wasn't here last week. Took a little small trip with the family before kids' school started, so I couldn't even pre-record that one. So I apologize for that. Inshallah, we'll try to be more regular as kids' school started now, and there's no trips planned. One of the challenges we face in this consumer-driven world is that we're bombarded with ads, right? Whether it's of different cars, whether it's watches, whether it's new models of the same phone, right? But the way they design it and market, and they add these new enticing feature, makes us want to buy that product, even if we don't need it. And it's for any product, not just a product we already have. For example, if we're driving, if we don't normally wear watches, and we're driving past a billboard that has this really nice Rolex watch or whatever the watch names are, and it looks fancy, and the guy or a girl is driving in a convertible with the hair going flying, and they have this nice watch on themselves, and they look so happy, automatically we start thinking, subhanAllah, if I had that, maybe I'll be happy too, because everyone's looking for happiness, right? And that's how they market it, right? Or even as simple as, I have an iPhone 11. It just came out last year, but now iPhone 12 is out. I just want to have this new phone because it's just something that, how they market it. The only feature it may have is that one extra camera on there, but because it's an iPhone 12, it's the newest model, I have to have that because new things give us excitement. We like to get a new gadget, we learn it, we get obsessed with it, go over every single thing about it, and then human nature, we sort of get used to it. It becomes sort of old, and now we need something new, something exciting, something. So we start buying things, and unfortunately, this mentality also creeps up into our marriages. Right? Today's title is, rekindling the lost spark in a marriage, and it's not just for people that have been married for a long time, but it applies to everyone. Whether it's someone that's starting off new, it's actually better for people that are starting off newlyweds because then they can keep this in the back of their mind that, you can't let it get to the point where things just seem old and redundant, right? But because of this consumer-driven world where we want, and, the customer is right, and you can return things or get new things. If I don't like it, I'll walk away from it. Burger King, I don't like my fries. I'm going to go around and say my fries are too hot. That creeps up into our marriages as well, right? If you've been married for a long time or even a short time, if you remember back to the days of when you first got married, how exciting it was. And all the things we did leading up to the marriage, especially men. Men, the classic thing guys do is, they're getting married in a year or 3 months. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lift weights because I want to make myself look good, right? They want to look good in that tight shirt. They want to have those muscles bulging. Women, they may try different makeups and find the best makeup that works for them, or find hairstyles or go for clothes or whatever it is, right? Whatever we can do to make ourselves more attractive and more presentable to the opposite side, because it's new excitement. We want them to attach to us. And after we get married, we do things like, open the door for our wife, or we buy chocolates randomly, we send them flowers, or, we make them their favorite dish or learn how to make a dish, right? Or say, as time starts passing, I like to call it a new car feeling, right? You have this new car, and you're trying to keep everything polished, keep everything shiny, and all of a sudden, as you start getting, a little bit of food in there or whatever it is, it doesn't seem like the same thing, right? You get used to driving, it's just a car, I'm going to drive from one place to another. Before, if you had a nice expensive car, you park it far away from anyone else that can damage it, can scratch it up. But now, after a few months, you're like, okay, whatever, it's just a car. So, and then you add kids to the mix of a marriage, right? And then we get tired because we're working or taking care of the kids. And then we start thinking, well, why am I opening the door for her? Allah gave her her own hands. She has energy. Let her do it herself. Why am I doing this? Why can't they open the door themselves, right? Or flowers are such a waste of money. If I buy them, they're going to die in 3 days anyway. What's the point of buying these flowers? Or why should I keep cooking for him? He can just order out if he wants. I don't want to spoil him, right? I don't want him to get used to my food. right? And over time, things just get old, right? We no longer care how we look or how we dress. Not that we wear like ripped t-shirts or ripped clothing, but it's just you don't have that, oh, I'm gonna look nice for my wife. I'm gonna look nice for my husband. I'm gonna make sure I'm groomed, right? And we just think he should know. I had a long day at work, and she should know that I had a long day at work. I'm tired from working. I'm tired from taking care of the kids, and he should love me for who I am, right? So that we have to understand that when we decide to get married, we do it for the long term. People that want to get married, especially that are Muslim, when there's so many other options of doing haram outside, why do people want to get married? They're not looking for a short-term contract, right? This is a lifelong contract, and that's the intention we go into, right? And we did it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a witness, right? And that becomes an amana for us to fulfill the rights and responsibilities of the marriage until the end of time. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the option for divorce where you have an out, right? But it's one of the most disliked things by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though it's allowed. And it's reserved for things when things go really, really south and become unbearable to the point where you just can't live with that person. And that's a whole separate discussion we're not going to talk about, right? We can't just because we start realizing who we're living with, or we see some bad characteristics or qualities, we can't say, you know what, I don't like that option on my phone. I want a newest model. You can't just trade your wife or your husband in and get something else, right? And especially when kids are involved, right? Or house is involved, or money's involved, it's a big mess. Talk to people that are divorced and look at their life. If you look at how complicated it becomes, just by looking at them, you're like, you know what, I can put up with whatever. Because when you get divorced, a lot of times people regret it. They say, you know what, even though it was bad, I should have stuck around, right? Or, think about the schedules they're making. If you look at the schedules they're making, the spreadsheets they have on when, what day, what time, when can they meet, when can they be with the father, when can they be with the mother, and then you add, let's say you get remarried and you have someone else that was married and they have children. That just becomes such a big headache. When you think about visitation, how do you take family vacation, child support, and we're not even talking about the emotional destruction of the child, right, and the destabilization of a home, right? And that is the ultimate breakdown in the quote-unquote smart home, is that when all the connections are ripped apart, right? Because without appliances, you can't even have a home. Forget about a smart home. So what do? We're year 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 into our marriage, and it's just not what it used to be, right? It's just not. And the first thing we have to understand that that's part of the challenge of being married, right? A marriage is like a house. It's a long-term investment, and people that have a house, and if you buy a house, you'll sort of understand this as well, is that when you look to buy a home, right? When you look to buy a house, people look to buy a forever home, right? They're not looking, unless you're a flipper, or very, very few people have the intention that, I'm buying this house for 5 years. And there are people that do that. But for the most part, when people are ready to settle down, they've been renting for a long time, they say, I want to buy a house, and I want to buy a long-term house. It may not be a forever home, but it's at least 10, 15-year plan. Maybe when the family outgrows, or I need to have my parents move in, I'll think about something else, or I'll think about making additions. But when people buy a forever home, they're looking at different angles, right? They're looking at the square footage, to the bedrooms, to the utility bills, to the taxes. Very rarely do people say, I'm going into this house to live for 3 years and then move out, right? So when they're buying the house, they think this is it, right? And as you start living in a house, it's natural. You start seeing things that are maybe like worn out. You'll see dents and scratches and holes in the wall, or they develop as you are using the house, because that's what happens when you have children. They throw something, gets hit in the wall, there's a hole there, right? Or and you have to fix that. Or you feel like, this kitchen, I just need to upgrade it. I want to make it look nicer. So what do? We don't say, you know what, I need to upgrade the kitchen, I'm going to just get out of the house, right? Instead of spending $20,000 on a kitchen, you're not going to spend $300,000 on a new house. So what do people do? They fix it, or they upgrade it, or they make additions to it, right? And that's how marriage is, right? It's not. And the thing is that it's not just about renovating a house. Sometimes when people are used to the same layout, especially women, what they do is that in the same living room, you're used to the same setting for like 5 years. I just want something different. Instead of buying new furniture, you can do that. But sometimes a simple thing as just changing the layout, it makes it look new. Obviously, you're like, wow, it looks really nice, right? It's all about making something old look new. And how do you do that? And inshallah, we'll talk about that. So similarly, in a marriage, that's how it is. It's a long-term investment for both sides. How so? right? Initially, you can say, fine, you fall in love with the house and you get, you buy the house, right? Then you don't really know all the inside stuff in the house. Once you start living there, people say, oh, house is investment. Sometimes people say house is liability. I'm finding this wrong with it. I'm finding that wrong with it. I got to fix this or fix that. But you don't just walk away from it unless things are really, really bad. Right? In the same way, when you get married, maybe initially it's about the looks, right? It's about the physical touch, the flower, and the candy, and the jewelry. But as we get older, you start getting white hair, maybe the wrinkles start setting in, and the arthritis kicks in, and maybe we have health problems. We need each other more and more. Right? We need a partner, a friend, a confidant, someone that'll be there for us all the time. Right? And that only happens with the attitude that we're both all in for this for the long haul. If we're looking for a way out right when we get married, this is not going to happen. Right? This is investment on both sides. The saddest case of divorce are when people are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, all of a sudden they want to call it off. Right? Because at that point, you're getting older. You're too old to hang out with people, to play ball, right? You're too old to party late, right? You need someone that's going to help you with your daily needs, remind you to take your medicine so you can keep staying healthy. Or you just need a friend to talk to. You don't need the physical intimacy anymore, right? And if you lose that person, you become more alone and miserable. So that's why you can never let it get to the point where you're getting that old and all of a sudden say, you know what, I really can't stand this person. And that didn't happen overnight. It happens over time. So we have to find a way to keep our marriage strong and exciting. And because our nafs always wants new things, right? Shaitan, on top of that, our nafs wants new things, and shaitan is there to break up marriages. That's what his goal, one of his major goals is to break up marriages, right? There's a story about how, one day this big shaitan was waiting and all these little shayateen came to him and told him, oh, I made this person cheat, I made this person, lie. And he wasn't impressed. He's like, yeah, good, great. And one shaitan comes and says, I made a husband and wife fight and I broke up their marriage. And he says, great, that's great. So shaitan is there to break up marriages, right? And he sees dry wood. And when you anyone that knows how to light a fire, you can do it by putting, gasoline or lighter fluid on there and get it going. But if you do fire the proper way, you need kindle. Kindle is small pieces of dry wood. And if you gather all together, you put a little bit of spark in there and it starts slowly growing. Right? It becomes a big fire. Right? And that's what shaitan is doing. He's eyeing the dry wood. What's dry wood? It's different things that happen. We'll talk about this, that slowly over time, it's just building up. And then one spark happens and then the whole marriage goes in flames. Right? The wife says, I can't deal with you anymore. I'm done. I'm walking out. It didn't happen because, some simple thing happened. It's been building up over years. Or the husband says, I'm done with you. I'm walking out. Right? It's been going on for years. If your husband or your wife tells you all of a sudden one day they want a divorce, or they find out they're cheating on you, it's not something that happened overnight. That flame, that kindle has been there for a while, and shaitan's been fanning those flames. So today, inshallah, we have very limited time, obviously, but we can talk about some of the practical tips that we can use, that we can take home and work on, whether our marriage is new or whether our marriage is 30 or 40 years deep, or we're even looking to get married, because these are things we need to keep in mind, because we need our wife on the same page. As a discussion you can have with your future spouse as well about what are long-term goals, what are you looking for in a book. Write these down, or on your phone, you can review later, or you can go back and listen to the talk later, I guess, too. So the first tip is that physical attraction. Now, remember when we first got married, we made sure we did things to impress our spouse. Whether it was making sure our hair is well groomed, we have a proper haircut, we put gel in our hair, we hairsprayed, clothing, whether we changed our clothing, what we bought, what we wore. Sometimes we change clothes in the morning to the evening when we come home with something else on. For sisters, maybe putting on makeup. And think about all the things that we did to try to attract the other person, right? All the simple things. It's not, it's the small things that add up, right? It's something we consistently did, right? And whether we're husband or wife, it doesn't just apply to women where they have to look like supermodels, because, even as they are naturally aging and maybe getting wrinkles and be skinny and whatnot, while we continue to let our bellies get bigger, right? It's not just directed towards one person. It was both people, but that can get old. You lose that desire to dress up for someone. You lose that desire to look nice for someone, and you're just tired. And as guys, we may want our wives to look a certain way. We want them to look really nice and be petite and, whatever our perception of beauty is. Whereas we don't care. We're just going to be as obese as possible. We can't look at our toes, but we want our wife to look good, or vice versa. We want our husband to look like the guy on TV, or the one on the billboard, but we don't care about our own health, right? It should be both a husband and a wife always trying to look good for each other, right? And this is very, very important, because I'll give you a few examples. Maybe that'll help understand why it is always important to always try to look good for the other. When we go to work, do we go in our pajamas, or do we go in the most pressed shirt and pants or dress or whatever we wear to work? It depending on if we're men or women. Why do we do that? Right? Who are we trying to impress? Yeah, you can say, you know what, it's a professional look. I need to look good at the workplace, but why? Right? If it's a bunch of guys, let's say I'm going to hang out with a bunch of guys. What am I going to wear? Cargo, maybe a t-shirt, right? But you throw someone of the opposite gender in the mix, even if you're married, Shaitan has a thing inside you. Hey, I gotta look good. Shaitan's in there. The same thing for sisters. When you add maybe a little different color hijab, why? When we're going out, to work, why are we trying to look the most prettiest? Deep down inside, actually think about it next time we do that. Right? Deep down inside, forget about trying to fool yourself on why I'm doing it. But if you're trying to look nicer and nicer every single day, is there something else going on that you're trying to impress? Right? It's a very deep and subtle question. But think about that, because we all have that from the time we get into school, or we're trying to look good for the opposite gender, to even after we get married. We're human beings. It's there. But think about that, because that, again, it's all kindle for shaitan, right? If we're going all dressed up to work, let's say the husband stays at home or the wife stays at home, whatever, the opposite, or both go to work, right? You're going to work looking nice, trimmed, blow-dried beard, smelling good, or have your hair done if you don't do hijab, or wearing a nice hijab, or wearing certain clothing, and then we smell good, and then now we come home. We're tired after a long day. We quickly change into pajamas, and now don't even put on deodorant because we're not at work trying to impress anyone. Think about that, the optics of that, how that feels at home, right? And again, it sounds simple, but all these things add up, right? It takes a lot of small little kindle, but eventually it can be a fire. Now, I'll be a little bit blunt. A man, when he goes to work, is seeing all these women dressed up, right? And be honest with yourself. You're not someone, when you go to work, are you really looking down and not looking at the ghair mahram when no, you can't do that at workplace. If you do that, they'll find you weird. You might even get fired. So you have to have a degree of eye-to-eye contact, right? And you'll see things that you may not want to see, but you have to see. And now you have all this input. And then you're driving home, you're looking at these billboards. So all these input, you come home and you find your wife maybe not dressed in the best way, or not taking care of herself. Now, shaitan is going to have a field day with that. You know what? I'm going to spend more time at the office, because they're going to give me my coffee. They're going to be nice to me. They talk sweet to me. Whereas when I come home, my wife's yelling at me. She's the first thing she does when I go through the door is tell me something to do, right? Or vice versa, right? We come home from work as a wife, and our husband's sitting there, maybe he works from home, and he's just on the couch. He's wearing a t-shirt. He's got his belly sticking out, got chips over there, whatnot. And the guy at work is asking me, oh, how was your day? How are your kids? My husband never asked me that. Again, all of these are small little sparks, right? Eventually they can lead to a big flame, and these things can add up. So we have to maintain physical attractiveness as much as possible. I know this is the first thing I talked about, and I know I'm not trying to be vain, but we live in a very exaggerated world. I want to pick and choose my words carefully, because sometimes kids are listening too. We live in a very, very exaggerated world. What do I mean by that? Everything we see is not what it is. It's exaggerated to the nth degree, especially with camera and optics and whatnot, the way they take pictures. Even if you look at, okay, who do they put on these billboards or on these ads? They're not picking just random Joe Schmo off the street and putting them on there, right? There was a story about this, someone told me recently, this guy that used to the chaiwala in India or Pakistan or somewhere, and someone came across him and he looked good. He was literally serving chai. And now he's like on magazines and pictures because they spiced him up and spruced him up and he looks really good. Right? So they're literally finding 0.00001% of the best looking men or women, right? They already found a degree of perfection there. And then on top of that, they put makeup on there to hide any potential sign of something that they may not like, right? Imperfection. And then on top of that, someone was telling me that when they put these pictures up, they not only do that, I think they either put glaze on their body or they glaze the picture, something like that, to make it look even more shiny and glistening. Now think about what what our intake is throughout the day, whether we're men or whether we're women, the opposite gender. They're making these people look so attractive, right? And again, we want to be like this. We're no, Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie or whoever you watch, whatever movies you watch. We're not those people, but we want someone of the opposite of that caliber, right? That's being poisoned in our brain already. And now when we let ourselves go, right, when we're not formal with our spouse, we're going home and your spouse is not wearing deodorant or not have body spray on, it doesn't smell pretty like the woman at work where she walks past you and you can smell perfume from 10 miles down, right? All of these things, this is one of the major causes of marital conflict. We discussed this earlier. I'm not going to go into it because, for the sake of the discussion, that you can read books on this. Mufti Abdul Rahman has a great section in this book, a Muslim Guide to Healthy Muslim Handbook of a Healthy Muslim Marriage. He has a section on the intimacy part of it, physical attractiveness. It's a very enlightening section that both as a husband and wife we should read that. But again, I don't want to put our heads in the sand and act like this is not going on around us. And if you as a husband or a wife think that, oh no, my husband's religious, this is not happening, he's actually just not even looking at girls at work, or she's not even talking to any men at work, you're fooling yourself, right? You're fortunate that there's still your marriage is still together because of all these fitnas that are going on. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's so many times we're coming up across marriages that people have married for 15, 16, 18, 20 years, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm done. Or they find out they've been having some sort of affair with someone else, right? These sparks are always constantly lighting, and you never know when one's going to catch on fire. So the biggest thing you can do is actually just make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He protects our marriages, because it's been bombarded by so many different ways. So, and this also goes back to communication, right? We've talked about communication, and I cannot stress this enough in every single one of these points. Communicate. As a husband or a wife, yes, it may be awkward, but that's a conversation you have to have, right? Whether, if you can't have it in person, have it over text. I'm working in corporate America, I'm exposed to these types of things. However you want to have that conversation, right? The world that our parents lived in is not the world we live in, right? They had to go search for sin to commit sin. Here, it's in the palm of our hand, right? We're constantly being bombarded. And the second thing is that even if you've been married for 10 years, things have changed in the last 10 years and how exaggerated this world is becoming, and we cannot be blind to that. So anyway, we can go on and on with examples, but I'll stop right there. The key point is that no matter if you've been married for 10 years, 15 years, 20, 30 years, try to keep looking nice, right? As nice as possible. Yes, we're getting old. I'm not saying go get Botox and get plastic surgery and always look like you're 20 years old, but understand that try to keep yourself groomed as much as possible. Try to dress as nice as possible when you can, so that shaitan doesn't whisper in our hearts about the person is dressing up for parties for other people, or why when they go out to other people's house, they're dressed up. When they're home, they look like slobs, right? You don't want shaitan to have any role in our marriage to destroy it. Second big tip. So first one was physical attraction, making sure you look good physically. Second thing is communication. Again, this was last talk was about the verbal and non-verbal forms of communication. We can discuss this, but briefly, talk nicely. Again, sounds very simple, but think about how, and maybe initially when we got married, right? We'd ask, how are you? Every single time. You go somewhere, come back, oh, how was it? How was everything? How you got back from home, from school? How was work? How was school? Or simple as, oh, thank you for giving me water. It's just water, but you said thank you. Or you say please, or you even use maybe loving words like honey or John or whatever words you use with your wife. All these things have to keep it going. You can't just stop after the first year because, okay, you know what, mission accomplished. I'm married. She's stuck with me. He's stuck with me. We'll have to live together now. No, that can quickly dissolve. There's a lot of examples of people that had it going for a long time, and all of a sudden it just broke apart. And they always say that it's never one thing. It's things that keep building up, right? Along with speaking nice gestures, like opening the door for our wife, right? Why do we open doors for when we're walking in the office or whatever, when someone's coming behind us, or even the elevator, right? We're nice when we hold the door open for people behind us. But when with our family, with our children, we don't even think about that. Oh, they can open their door themselves, right? Keep sending flowers randomly. You don't have to send it every week, but randomly, unpredictable. That always builds love. flowers, making his favorite dish, ordering out one day to save her from cooking after a long day, giving hugs, holding hands, all the things that we used to do when we first got married, we shouldn't let those go. I don't think that the honeymoon period is over. My courting her or him is done. Now I can be who I want to be. Now I can be the real person. That's why this whole dating thing, this concept, I don't understand this concept. When people, when non-Muslims go on dating, even Muslims these days, you're just being completely fake with that person. And then the minute you get married, then the real person comes out. Right? If you look at even, people want to get married to these supermodels or these good-looking guys, top 100 men or whatever. Why is it that marriages never keep going? We think outwardly, if I had that person, I would never look at anyone else. Well, how come they still cheat? Right? Underlying issue is that they don't have iman and taqwa. That's, again, a separate discussion. We're hoping that, we all have some of that, but that's something we also need to work on. But again, these are small tips to keep our marriage going, is that all the things we used to do when we first got married, rekindle that. Keep doing that. Remind ourselves of doing that. And we're human beings. We forget. We need reminders. I need reminders myself. So, tell each other, I love you. Right? And maybe explain why, you were there for me for this time, or, when I had my surgery, you helped me with simple things, whatever it is. It's always good to explain, okay, why are you just saying that? You're just saying that because you want to just get out of something. But if you actually say why you appreciate them, right? They say, the people say that read these books, tell them why, appreciate them for what they do. It sounds very simple. After dinner, so thank you, that was a great dinner, right? I know it sounds silly, but I guarantee if you start doing this, even now, both the husband and the wife for each other, right? First, the other will wonder, what's going on? What did you do? What are you not telling me? What news are you about to break to me by being nice, right? Or number two is like, okay, what do you want? It's like kids, all of a sudden start doing something good. It's like, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want to buy? But again, we can just say, you know what? I'm just doing it because I want to be a better person. I want to have better character, right? Give them a sweet card from the store. Some of us are not very expressive. We don't know how to say things properly. So I can guarantee you, Hallmark knows exactly what to say. If you go to Walgreens, any store, find the card, just sit there, take some time, 5 minutes, read through some of the cards. Some of them have beautiful sayings in there. It's like, oh, you know what? This is exactly how I feel. There's a reason why it's a multi-billion-dollar business also. Find a card and randomly give it. Right? Simple romantic things that we can do. Again, the non-verbal communication that shows love. The Prophet ﷺ was very good at this. He took a cup of water that he was drinking, and when he gave it to his wife Aisha, he didn't just give it to her. He turned that spot where he drank from, and he gave that spot to her. Right? It's just such simple, but such beautiful and such love and such depth that you don't have to. He's not buying her like jewelry every other month to kind of buy her love. It's these small acts. He would lay in her lap. They would do things like racing, playing with each other, racing. Right? She won one time, he won one time. It's these small acts that we have to keep things going so that our marriage stays afresh, doesn't get old. We just don't become couch potatoes and like, I'm too tired to do something. Do things for each other, right? And sometimes communicating is not saying something, right? Don't always have to comment on everything. They're having a bad day, don't comment. They're having a, bad day and yelling and letting steam off, just stay quiet. Maybe if there's something wrong, they'll realize it, or you can have a, grown-up conversation later on. Other thing is never argue in front of children. Never ever argue in front of children. We're gonna have arguments, but not in front of the children. Just smile. Smiling at each other, that says a lot. You don't need to even say something. When you smile, number one, you're making the other person happy. They know you're in a good mood. Number two is sadaqah too. Number three, we're running out of time, so I'm gonna go through some of this quickly. So give each other space. Even though we're married to each other, doesn't mean we need to be up in our face all the time. Each person needs to have their own space, whether it's once a month, once a week, however it works out, whatever's convenient with children and whatnot. Give them space so they can reset and come back and be energetic again. Sometimes, today was the first day of Salam school, and some of the mothers were just saying how their last kid is in school now, and they described the moment of being at home alone by themselves, no husband, no children, as quote unquote blissful, right? It's a simple things that we don't realize because we go to work, we get to escape from that reality as husbands and fathers and have that's a different kind of stress, but that one stress, I can handle it, right? But they don't get a chance at that. So give each other space, right? Because both parties need space. As long as it's within the Sharia, if the wife wants to go somewhere, as long as you're not violating the Sharia, not doing anything haram, give them space. Allow them to have their own space and do whatever they want. Number four, help each other, right? sometimes we have roles that are defined. It can be classical where the husband goes to work, the wife stays at home, or vice versa. Some roles are being reversed. Sometimes we get into a routine. Okay, my wife always cooks and cleans and does laundry, and I just take that for granted. But you can help out, and Prophet ﷺ also showed that. He was the greatest example. He would do chores at home and help his wife with chores. He was the greatest man that ever lived. If he's doing chores, who are we to say I'm too good for that? I can't change any diapers. I can't do any laundry. My job is to take the trash out. That's what I do for years. That's all I'm gonna do. No, help each other out, even if it's a small thing. Maybe one day just do the kids' laundry, or iron the clothes, or do the vacuuming, whatever it is. Any place you can help, that just makes the other person realize, what, he's really into this marriage. He wants to make this family work. He wants to make this smart home work, because he's pitching in. He's not just doing quote unquote his own thing and let me do my own thing. Each person's helping each other. Number 5, keep household matters to yourself. Right? This is a big deal, because a lot of times marriages break not because of what's happening between the husband and wife. It's because a third party gets involved, whether it's the in-laws, mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, or some non-mahram thing going on at work, right? It's never a good idea to vent or share or complain about a husband to your friends, to your family, even to your own mother, right? And same thing for guys. Never talk about your wife in front of your friends, because you never know what thought shaitan can plant in people's hearts. Right? In a story, Mufti Abdurrahman was talking about how a mother told her daughter not to come to her with any complaints about her husband, her son, basically. Right? The daughter is married. She's having some issues, and she's trying to come to tell her mom. She said, "No, don't come to me, because your father, my husband, is different personality than your husband. I can't give you advice because I don't know him. You know him better than I do, and you have to make that decision." Right? And you can seek help from other people, maybe that are neutral, that have vested interests, that are sincere, not just venting to people, say, my husband does, my wife does, because again, that can cause a lot of fitna. They say ghar ki baat. That's really, there's a truth to that. We don't let things get out, even to our mother-in-law, even to our own mothers, because that can cause problems, right? It may cause resentment. Let's say I'm bad mouthing my wife, saying, my wife does this and this to my wife, to my mom. My mom's gonna have something in her heart against her. How is my daughter-in-law treating my son? Because that's blood, right? That can cause problems. So you have to be almost a politician, knowing what to say when, right? And the other thing is that, if you really need to talk to someone and you really need advice, get a therapist. Again, we want free advice, but free advice comes with a catch. Therapist, when you pay money, maybe you'll listen, right? But if you really need advice, ask someone that's sincere, that's really going to look out for you, that has some Islamic knowledge. Maybe they have a good marriage. They can give you advice on what's wrong or how they can help you, right? But it's always better to keep issues at home unless you need advice on it, or sincere advice on it, not just a vent, because everyone has issues, right? No one is perfect. I will have issues. Imagine if we don't cover for each other as a husband and wife. Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libas. We're garments for each other. If you don't, garments mean we cover each other's faults. If we don't cover each other's faults, then our faults will also be revealed. And that's something we would never want anyone to find out, what happens at home, right? So that's why when we have issues, we should never air out dirty laundry. Number 6. So love and compassion, having mawadda and rahmah. And this is one of the purposes of marriage, right? To have love and compassion. And don't forget that. That's always there in the beginning. But, as you get older and older in your marriage, you say, you become angry and gruff and whatever happening. Don't forget that love and compassion part, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said that best of you is the one who's best to your wife, and I'm the best to my wives. And life can become redundant, or stress becomes too high, and now we're just living with each other, right? We may not even think that others are friends, right? And not to say that husband and wife can't be friends, but always maintain a degree of formality as well. That love comes because you want to impress them. If you lose a degree of formality and you start, burping in front of them, or like passing gases because now you're quote unquote friends, because that's what friends do, that can cause problems, because you lose that novelty. My husband, he doesn't do this, or my wife doesn't do this, right? She always smells good. She always has, all those things do matter. The love and compassion and rahmah, that's there. We need to always have that, right? Be soft, be kind, be gentle. Number 7. We're almost done here. So number 7, always remind yourself that you have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This goes back to taqwa, that at the end of the day, we have to answer to Allah, and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always a goal. When you have that in mind, anything that comes in the marriage can be handled. Okay, what do I mean by that? Sometimes we do things, for example, I may go to work, have 2 jobs, and I come home and nobody says anything to me. Nobody thanks me for going to work, and I'm doing this day in and day out. Right? At the end, even if no one appreciates me at home, I know that I'm doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he told me, the Prophet told us that seeking halal income is a fard after all the fara'id, or that I'm taking care of my family. Even if no one in my family appreciates it or says anything, I know that I'm still getting word from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because I'm fulfilling a command of his. The same way, a wife may be cooking and cleaning every single day, but if she does it for that person and that person doesn't appreciate you, then it feels like I've been doing this my whole life and you haven't even said thank you once. I'm not saying that you shouldn't say thank you, and that's why I said earlier, thank them, appreciate them for what they do, remind them, thank you for doing the laundry, thank you for doing this. But at the same time, keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our only goal, and when we pass away, every single thing that we did, Allah knows and is watching and is writing down. He will never forget. Our spouse may forget. They may forget what I cooked 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, or a week ago, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forget, because we made food for our family, we're taking care of them. So having the proper intention, right? Doing it for the sake of Allah. And that will always, supersede everything. When someone catches your eye at work, you know what? I can't look at that. I have a wife at home. What that woman has, my wife has at home. What that guy has, my husband has at home. Right? For the sake of Allah. The fear and taqwa for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That supersedes everything. That has to be on top of everything. And I'm talking about at the end because it kind of ties it up all together. If I started off with that, then people wouldn't, understand or wouldn't get it. But this was realize that subhanAllah, this if we don't have taqwa and the fear of Allah, any of these things we can be afflicted by, right? And if you look at all of these things, it all boils down to what? Good character. Things we learn in school, preschool. Be nice to others, share, say nice things. If you don't have anything good to say about someone, don't say anything. Don't hit, don't yell, help each other, don't fight. Right? These are all things we learn in preschool, but unfortunately, as we become adults, we think that, that's not what I'm doing, but it really is. It's just a different word we use for it. Right? We're teaching these children, but we're forgetting ourselves. And that's why when we started this lecture series, we emphasize what? Character, good character. If we have good character, that's an ingredient for any relationship to prosper. If we have bad character, no matter what relationship, whether it's with our boss, whether it's our friends, our parents, our wife, they'll all crumble. But if we work on our character, this can be applied not just for husband and wife. I mean, this can be for your kids also, right? Each of these examples, go back and put it in the right context and apply for the kids. Right? Communicate, be nice to them, say nice things to them. Don't be harsh to them. Don't be mean to them. Thank them, appreciate them. Don't just make them thank you, because I'm going to work. Thank them. Thank you for cleaning up after yourself. Thank you for, helping with the dishes. All these things are interrelated to different. Today's context is about marriage, but it can be applied to children as well, right? And again, at the end of the day, marriage will have its ups and downs, right? We're going to laugh sometimes. We're going to cry sometimes. We're going to be happy sometimes. We'll be angry sometimes. Some days we'll be sad, right? And that's something we have to keep in mind all the time, that a perfect marriage is not when there's no arguments, because that's impossible. But a perfect marriage is that how we handle ourselves in that situation. What kind of character do we have, right? Can we suppress our ego for the sake of Allah and for the sake of the marriage, right? Do we know when to say something and when to stay quiet, right? And because if we suppress our ego sometimes, then our wife will suppress our ego sometimes too. Right? It's a two-way street. If both parties are not on the same page, and if only one party is only trying to make it work, they're the only one. Commonly, when people have marital issues, it's either the wife or the husband that wants to bring the issue, and the other one doesn't want to. They don't want to go to marriage counseling. They don't want to talk to anyone because they may know deep down inside they may have something there. So that's one thing, that when people want to make things together, both have to be on the same page. So with that, inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to keep the same flame in our marriage throughout our life, throughout our marriage, as we had when we first got married. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide life, a good, healthy marriage till the end of time. Wa akhiru da'wana, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.